7:37, welcome back to First Up, brought to you in part by Blue Mountain Water, the great tasting water, and it really tastes great. You should check it out. Right now we focus on budgeting, setting goals, and achieving those goals with our friends from the Unit Trust Corporation. In studio with us, Marketing Manager for UTC, Margaret White, and also Marketing Officer, Nilma Campbell. Ladies, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Welcome back.
All right, but the word budget is in the air. You know,
yes.
We're talking about personal budgeting, which is important to maximize one's development. Let's talk about, and very often we say, oh, we always hear about budgeting. But people, for some reason, there's some of us who take it seriously and actually start in small steps, and some of us who don't. What would you say are the main reasons that people keep not actually applying? What they know is common sense. What they already know will help them, budgeting. Why don't people really apply these principles?
I guess because they don't know how. Budgeting is really a simple means of knowing what your needs and wants are. And if you can distinguish that and write down everything that you do, it helps you to manage your budget effectively so that persons will not go, for example, when I go to the grocery, at times I may not write down what I want or I need actually, and I find myself with so many things in my grocery cart, and at the end of it, my expenses, I would have spent a little more than I had anticipated. So that if you don't write down the things that you need, then your budgeting will go awry. So it's really managing your expenditure, what you need, and you need to, of course, distinguish it.
But in a practical sense, it's really developing a good habit. At a very basic level. It's starting small with small things on a weekly basis, just sitting down and writing stuff, and starting to inculcate that habit in yourself and your family.
That's
right, Norma?
Correct, yes it is. And what budgeting also does, Paul, is that it allows you to work towards achieving your goals. And to a large extent, we are about assisting people in achieving their goals. What are your goals? Your goals are those things that you set forward for yourself in terms of your financial aspirations. To accomplish that, you must ensure that your goals are smart. So you must be specific in what you want. It must be measurable, it must be achievable, realistic, and time-bound. What does that mean? If your goals are smart, then you would have a specific need. So if you're working towards achieving your car or purchasing a car, you say, what type of car do I want? Is it a Suzuki Liana? Is it the Audi A6, as the case may be?
What can I afford?
What can I afford? Because it must be realistic as well. You also need to set a time. So if you're saying that you want to have your down payment to purchase your car in the next 2 to 3 years, then you need to be able to outline those things and budget accordingly. Because in budgeting, you need to then look at ways of reducing your expenses. Once you would have done that and you found that money to save, you then have to then determine, am I going to then spend that money on some shoe or maybe a lime out with the boys that I was...
Women always say shoes. It's always about the shoes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But there are things that impact your goal setting, things over which you have no control. Let's look at some of those issues.
So we have inflation, that's a big thing. At this time, inflation is just a little over 7%. And it hinders you really from achieving some of your goals. And so it reduces your earning power, your earning potential. So that when you see things rising, for example, in the recently read budget, persons were talking about the gas, the premium gas that has raised by over 45%. And so that affects the purchasing power of your dollar. It reduces it. And so where am I going to get this extra money from? And so what we do is we encourage persons, well, you can perhaps have a second job that helps, or you can monetize your skills, you have skills in terms of computer skills. You can do something in your gallery in terms of crafting, or you can pursue further education, which is what I have done. At one time, I was a secretary, and I decided, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I decided to pursue my tertiary education up to master's level. And so this is where I am today. So I can live a comfortable life.
So you increase your marketability.
Increase my marketability, right. And that's important. That helps you in terms of the underlying factors such as inflation. Those are some of the risks. Including in that is some persons have, you may end up being divorced, or you may lose quite a lot of things in Diego Martin. A lot of persons lost, including self. I lost almost everything. And so you have to regroup and start all over again. There's where your emergency fund comes in. And those are some of the understanding the underlying factors such as risks, inflation. Those things help you to combat things like
but that's
inflation.
a good example because you're a practical sitting example here. Let's talk about how you take something like inflation, which can for the ordinary citizen seem quite esoteric and quite, well, inflation is a number, 7%. I'm not an economist. How does that affect me? I will live anyway. I will find something to eat. I will buy what I need to buy. And also, how do you cater for natural disasters or mitigating circumstances like the floods? Is that something you should budget for, the rainy day fund? How practical can you be with that?
Inflation, first of all, impacts on your buying power. What does that mean? Margaret would have spoken about the impact of the increase in premium gas. But if you look at everyday items, when I would have been on the media previously, I would have mentioned something as simple as that little snack that my son used to purchase at 75 cents that is now 150. There was kiss cake muffin that came out at 125 is now 325. So what that shows you is that as time goes along and inflation, especially if you take into consideration food, it impacts on how much you can buy. Because sometimes you go into the grocery, you purchase 5 items today, and next week you go back and you take up the very said 5 items, and they ask you for an additional $5 when you paid $100 the last week. So inflation actually reduces the buying power of your dollar. It means, therefore, that if you are seeking towards achieving your goals, that you now have to take into consideration that you have to then add as you go along or increase or try to increase your investment or your savings to combat that inflationary impact.
But how do you do that when the goods and service providers are very crafty at masking the gradual increase in goods and services, and most people tend, and I stress tend, because of habits we've developed, and it goes back to habit, not to want to drop our standard of living, not to want to make decisions regarding our budget that will affect our standard of living. So we see prices going up here and there, and we don't make the cuts. We don't practically internalize and say, well, inflation has added $200-300 to my spending in the last 6 months. Have I compensated for that in my habits or in my budgeting? How do we do that on a practical level and get that habit included? Because that's what you have to do, which may be more difficult in some instances.
The reason why it is important that you do that is because it is essential that you look at your expenses. Margaret spoke about need versus want. In doing that, what you are then required to do is monitor your expenses, because we would have also shared in the past where you can actually, what we consider in local or the vernacular language, to bad spend money. And that is not what you're aiming for. So if, as Margaret stated before, you write down all your expenses, you will see where there are areas that you can actually reduce some things, eliminate some things. Thereafter, what you ought to do is ensure that you utilize that money to invest, to generate income, to then allow you to deal with the vagaries of inflation.
So the bottom line is, do not panic, because you always have options. Indeed. Even when it seems as though things happen that are beyond your control, you still have options. Margaret White, may we invade your personal space a bit and find out how you've been coping, because you are one of the people in Diego Martin who basically lost everything as a result of the terrible weather we had that fateful weekend.
What I've had to do is to go straight into my emergency fund. I always apply what I learn, and being a unit holder, I went straight into my emergency fund, and that's what we encourage persons to do. To be realistic is that yes, you've lost a lot of things. The emergency fund is now depleted, and I need some more resources. And so that was able to help alleviate some of the fears and concerns, the discomfort. And so we encourage persons, please have an emergency fund. It really helps, it really works. If it means putting down, as Nelma mentioned earlier, be specific. Every month I want to put in, or I want to invest $200 towards my emergency fund. And in that way, you would find it will accumulate over time, because I've had that fund for a while.
How do we get people to understand that this is not a burden? This is a blessing you're giving yourself. Because very often, because of the sacrifices we have to make in some area, vis-a-vis the need versus want paradigm you spoke about, that we say, well, I'm suffering myself. But you're not. You're really investing and putting aside something that will help you in the long run. It's an investment in yourself. And on a practical level, what types of funds are available in the unit trust to deal with those sorts of circumstances?
Okay, well, earlier Nilma alluded to the goals. Once you want to achieve specific goals, we have short-term goals, long-term goals, medium-term goals, short-term being 1 year. And so we have the TT Dollar Income Fund, and you can use that as an emergency fund. Then we have the...
That's what, TT Dollar Income Fund. Let me get some more details on that.
Okay, the TT Dollar Income Fund, where you can have access to that 24/7. It's a short-term investment. It's aligned to a card where you have access to it anywhere in the world. It's compounded daily. Interest is compounded daily, so you get your interest on a quarterly basis. And that's the TT Dollar.
And what are the interest rates based where that is concerned, the TT Income Fund?
The TT Income Fund, is at this time, it's 1.3%.
Because it's a short-term
Because it's a short term, and the interest rate at this time is pretty low. However, we have the Growth and Income Fund, and the interest rate at this time to date is 5.26%. That's a long-term fund, and it's invested in the stock market. So over time, you would see growth. You have dividends. You get dividends twice annually, and you also get the fact that you also have access to your fund as well. And there is a 3-year guarantee. So just in case the fund does not function very well, you will get your full investment back.
You lose nothing.
So you lose nothing. And so, of course, we have the retirement, and my colleague Nelma can talk about the retirement account, which is the Universal Retirement Account, which is now 8.8% to date.
Universal Retirement Fund, that's carded specifically towards retirement. You can set your retirement age at any level from 50 years and upwards. We generally you start the account with $100, and that investment allows you to supplement whatever your pension is, because this is something you can start on your own. Companies can also invest in this fund, which is actually our pension fund for their employees. It's portable, so you can move from one employer to the next should you change jobs. We also have our individual retirement unit account, which is also a growth and income fund, so it has within it the price guarantee and so on, as well as a pension fund. The pension fund is a retirement fund that is geared towards individuals who are seeking to reduce their income tax, because it has an annuity attached to it, and therefore you have the convenience of the tax credit during your working years. So then when you are working to increase your disposable income.
You said that you always have the option to find a second job to bolster your finances when you need that extra boost. But there's something called taxes. Is there a way that we can hedge against the taxes that we have to pay? How can we do that? Because it seems as though every cent that we earn is subject to that 25% that we've got to give back. Well, this time it's Uncle Larry we have to give the money to. Before it was Uncle Winston, and before that it was Auntie Karen.
It's not just about the payee tax, which is 25%. In some instances, it's actually 40 cents, because you have your payee tax, which comes out at the get-go before your salary gets to you. And then when you're shopping as a consumer, you have that additional VAT, which is the value-added tax, the VAT. So in looking at how you treat with your taxes and how you combat against that, really, it's still about managing your expenses. No matter what you do, you manage your expenses. So you know beforehand that there are some items that you would have to pay tax on, and now we have the discussions about some in other food items, for example, that may become zero rated, you have to look at what your options are, because there are organizations, because of the smallness and the uniqueness of those organizations, you get away from paying the tax because of the smallness of that organization. So you may choose to buy from a private vendor as against the supermarket that's VAT registered, and you now have to pay tax.
What options are there for people, young, middle-aged, or elder people, to consolidate in a group and invest in a group with the unit trust corporations? Because very often we do it via natural ways with Susuhan and stuff like that. Are there mechanisms or instruments that people can invest? Families want to invest together, brothers and sisters, parents for children in a group. And are there options there where that is concerned?
With all of our investments, you have the opportunity to invest as a group. We have individuals who can come together. They will then have joint accounts. But you also have companies or groups, communities, for example, committees. They can also register investments with us. Based on the timeline or the focus of their investment, we would recommend specific accounts. If there are groups of people coming together, then it means they will then have to determine how they choose their signature options. Excuse me. So with that, they have the opportunity to use what we call our joint holder declaration forms, and that would allow either person, so any one, or they can say any two, or it must be Paul and Nilma to sign, all right, in conjunction with one other. So you give your parameters in terms of how you access your funds, but you have the opportunity to invest as a group or as a company.
In terms of developing these prudent habits, because financial management is a habit that people should start to inculcate in their children. I mean, as simple as the piggy bank model is, it trains children to save and put aside some and save for yourself for later times. How successful has the gift-giving aspect of units been, where the unit trust is concerned, in terms of inculcating for children from very young these habits of saving, so that by the time they finish school and start to work, they take advantage of the time they have on their side, because that's a big advantage that we sometimes take for granted, and don't wait until they're later on in their lives to start to invest in their futures.
What has been happening due to the research that we did, the financial well-being, we've noticed an increase, as I indicated earlier in the program. There's an increased awareness in terms of investing and savings, so that you find parents are really inculcating this habit in children. Usually you find that young people, they will want to go to maybe the KFCs and so on, and they want to buy sneakers and things like that. But because of parents and their habits, and the fact that we are out there ensuring that persons are aware as to their investment habits, you find that there is an increase in terms of children saving for their future, saving for the things that they may need in the future.
And at what age can children start coming on their own, or is it advised that they come with their parents until they're 17, 18, and then they can start being more independent in terms of actually interfacing with the unit trust corporation?
So we have on account the Student Investment and Protection Plan, which has an insurance element to that, and that starts at 3 months. When the child is 3 months, or when the child is born, you have that account, and at the age of 18, the parent will transfer the beneficiary to the child. You also have the CIS, which is the Children Investment Starter Plan, and we give you an additional 5 units to that account. So yes, and the children can come on their own once they are of age limit, maybe 12, 15 years, and they can, of course, invest, deposit money on their own behalf. And that makes them feel a sense of pride. I saved $15 for the week, and I was able to invest that in the unit trust. So coming into unit trust, that really helps them and motivate them to want to save. Yes, it indeed builds the habit.
If someone wants to get more information, 625 unit.
624 unit.
624 unit. And you can also go to the website, ttutc.org. ttutc.com, and to find out what options are available to you as you seek to master your destiny, beat back inflation, hoodwink the taxman, and have that good quality of life that you would love to have.
The taxman.
Yes. We're going to take a time out because we've got to go to the C News Center to get the latest, and then we come back with more here on First Up.
You see it in the playfulness of Caribbean eyes, through the genuine happiness of our smiles. It's there in the unique way we express ourselves, in the color of our cultures, in the rich flavor of our cuisine, and in the pulse of our people. So, however far you may roam, this is home. This is Caribbean Airlines, the warmth of the islands.
With a vast degree of experience in the security industry, we are committed to offer all our clients a high degree of dedication, professionalism, and experience. All our officers are highly trained, trustworthy, and skilled to offer the following services: executive bodyguards, private investigations, electronic surveillance systems, canine and handlers, armed and baton officers. Visit us at the Southern Main Road, Quebec. Email maxmen.executive@gmail.com. The protection you need for today and for a safer tomorrow. Telephone 223-7570.
Hello, I'm Dr. Vishnu Jilal, and I invite you to join me every Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. on the medical program, The Healthy Lifestyle.
Where West Shore Medical,
a pillar of strength in healthcare.
West Shore Medical, looking after you and those you hold dear. West Shore Medical,
with state-of-the-art technology.
West Shore Medical, you're with the leader through and through. We are West Shore Medical. We're proud and happy to take care of you.
West Shore Medical Private Hospital. Healthcare with a heart.
This is C News on Talk City 91.1, Suite 100, and CTNTworld.com.
Good morning, I'm Stacey Ann Providence, and here's what's making headlines to 8 o'clock. Fire officers at Ryson Road complain about rat-infested quarters. WASA says Scott Street in San Fernando to reopen tomorrow. And in sport, Usain Bolt is nominated for the IAAF Male Athlete of the Year award for a fourth time. Well, the Fire Service Association is warning that fire officers may leave their stations unmanned if working conditions are not improved. Fire officers staged a protest last evening outside their headquarters on Ryson Road to air their discontent with a rat infestation. The association's acting president, Ashton Cunningham, said that the Public Health Department visited the station last week Friday and left rat poisoning. He said that this is not enough to deal with the multitude of rats in their dormitory. They fear their health is being jeopardized and they refuse to expose themselves to further risk. Mr. Cunningham said the officers will take action if the problem is not swiftly addressed. One director of the Food Prices Council, Wendy Leanne, says the council is compiling a list of recommendations for government in light of its removal of the 15% VAT on food items.
But I think that having announced that there will be further VAT reductions on other items, the council took the responsible position of examining the various categories of foods, and we met for an extended period yesterday afternoon, what I would call a marathon session, to come up with our own recommendations of what we feel are in the nation's best interests.
And she says she does